This one is very important to me personally, not just because I'm Ukrainian, but also because I'm coming from the world of literature. And when we speak about the war narratives, about the veteran literature, we mostly think only of two names, Ernest Hemingway and Erich Maria Remarque. Both of them have been the veterans of the World War I. Both of them have been writing about their experience, and both of them made revolution in the world literature because no one before them has experienced the same experience, and they are. And right now, while we are in the middle of the biggest war that Europe has been facing in decades, it's extremely important to write down those experiences, to share those experiences, and to listen to the narratives the veterans now have to tell us. So I want to introduce the moderator, Mikael Nydahl, who will tell more about our guest tonight. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and good evening to the panel here. I am Mikael Nydahl. I'm a literary translator and a publisher, and one of those Swedes who are now engaged in the process of making Ukrainian voices available in Sweden on stages with drama, in poetry, in fiction, and in non-fiction. And with me here on the stage are a few other persons engaged in this process. I would take you as you sit. First we have Wallin, who is also a translator, also a publisher of both fiction and non-fiction, situated here in Skåne, here in Stockholm. Sorry about that. Is there something important to add about you right now?
No.
No. So we can add that later on if you come to think of something. Next to Ola is Oleksandr Denysyuk, who you have a rather unexpected, you are sitting here as a writer because the book you wrote lies before you, but you have a history as a construction project manager, building houses the size of Kulturhuset, as I understood it, in various countries internationally.
Yeah.
But then when the war happened, you decided to join the armed forces of Ukraine. And this book that you have written is essentially about those experiences. Is this a good way to introduce you to the panel? Thank you. Then next to Oleksandr is Olena Herasymiuk, who is a poet, and I know you also write essays. So do you do translations?
Translations, yes.
Yeah, from what languages?
A corpus translations of veteran poems from Russian to Ukraine. It's a veteran Ukrainian army, but they wrote in Russian.
In the Russian
language. We're trying to make them text in a Ukrainian context.
Okay, right. So, but you have also a frontline experience because in 2014, if I remember it rightly, you joined as a military paramedic.
Yeah, I have 7 years paramedic in a hospitals, and I work in different teams and have this veteran experience.
Yeah, so, and this probably reflects on what you are writing as well, but we will get to that question. And last is Alex Voronov, who is not living in Stockholm but in Eskilstuna. You are a journalist and a columnist in Eskilstuna-Kuriren. But you are sitting here because you have devoted much time the last years to traveling in the Ukraine together with volunteers, Swedish volunteers, both fighting in combat and volunteers delivering humanitarian aid, I think. And you have also written about this in blågula kriget.
Yeah, I think you covered it all. I write columns in a number of regional daily newspapers.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for the last, almost 3 years.
Yeah, and this is, you devote this to your experiences in Ukraine. You also have this podcast together with Kalle Knivile, which is God morgon Ukraina.
God morgon Ukraina. Yeah, it's
Добрий ранок Україно.
Yeah, that's the intro from.
Yeah, and you even have the melody.
Yeah, so. Kirichenko gave us that. He allows us to use it for free.
Okay, I was about to ask you about this. Does he know that you use it?
Yeah, I met him. There's a story. I mean, if you're interested, I can tell you more.
Okay, we take that after the panel.
Yeah.
Great. So these are the persons, and as you see, we come to this theme from very, very different positions. And I think we should make an asset of us coming from very different positions. We shouldn't try to formulate some kind of common experience or view on this, but just let the four of you represent your different views. And I will give the word to you, Ola, first in a second, because I think there will be a few themes that will recur in your stories. And I just wanted to mention perhaps two things that have come to my mind when preparing for this panel, and then just let it hang in the air or let it drop to the floor if it doesn't feel, relevant to the discussion. But one of those themes is that of transformation. When I read about what is happening to concrete persons in the war in Ukraine today and what is happening to Ukraine as a society today, there is always this moment of transformation. War changes a person, trauma changes a person, and it changes the society, it changes the language. And for us as Swedes or Europeans, as translators, we are always confronted with this transformed reality and with a kind of task, how to make this transformation visible, understandable to our new context. We will see what will happen with this theme in the discussion. Another theme is far more concrete, and it has to do with a thought or an approach that I find both in your texts, your project, Oleksandr, and in your Olena. And this is about preserving those who have been killed in the war, of how to preserve their voices and of how to have them present in some form. And this is where I would like to give the word to you, Ola, because in a way we have a kind of fifth person present in this panel through you, and that is Victoria Amelina, who the poet, the war crime investigator, the journalist who was killed in Kramatorsk the summer of 2023. Ola, could you take over?
Yes, of course. I want to be the last one of the panel to speak, because as a publisher, we're always late. we work with slow, long processes. On the other hand, I started to work with this Ukrainian-Russian question in 2014, when I was international secretary of Swedish PEN. Then we worked a lot to try to show the Swedish public the Ukrainian perspective. We made some publications. small ones, fast ones. That wasn't, to give to people at occasions such as this. But in 2022, for me personally, it was a shock, this full-scale invasion, because I thought he was using it as a blackmail, because it had done that before. Unfortunately, it wasn't blackmail. And as a publisher, when you're working with these long, slow processes, you want to do something fast. So the first thing I did was to translate articles. And we didn't have any contacts with Ukrainian authors, because this question died in Sweden in 2015, 2016. It was too ambiguous, too boring, too I don't know what. So it didn't really, people wasn't aware of what was going on in eastern Ukraine. So there were no, or very few at least, translators from Ukrainian. There were, in 2022, it was 8 years since the last translation from Ukrainian into Swedish, which is not unique for Ukraine.
As a book, you mean?
As a book, yes, as a book. Which is not unique for Ukraine. Last year we published a novel by the Bulgarian author Georgi Gospodinov, and that was the first translation from Bulgarian to Swedish in 47 years. So we have these huge gaps on the Swedish book market, and that is a huge problem, especially when something happens such as the invasion. So the first thing we did was to pick the obvious choices when we found our first translator, Sofia Ugla, who spent the spring 2022 to refresh her Ukrainian knowledge. And she wasn't the only one, there was several. And she didn't work as a translator before that, she did other things. But she worked with Ukraine to freedom of speech and social issues and so on. So she translated Internat by Jardin. But that took a year before we got that book on the market, because that's the time frames we're working with. And also Andruchovich, Moscoviad. And then this autumn, Tamara Duda, The Daughter, which is a great novel about the Donbass, Donetsk in 2014-2015. An excellent literary depiction of the situation for an ordinary woman, and it was witnesses how the society starts to fall apart and becomes volunteer, and so on. But now, this year, I think we are starting to get to the core, to the narratives from the war itself, the full-scale war. Later this year, we will publish Arabesque by Jardin, newly written stories from the war, and also this it was just published a couple of weeks ago, Victoria Amelina, looking at women, looking at war, and I guess most of you are already familiar with the book. If not, in short, it started out as a diary, personal diary of the first week before the full-scale invasion, and the first days and the first weeks and months and so on. And then she started to write portraits of women who became researchers of war crimes, and such as herself. Mm-hmm. But there are also essays, and she writes a lot about international justice. She started to study it, to be able to research war crimes properly, because you have to know the reason, you have to know what to ask a victim of a war crime or a witness to make it valid in a court later. And there's also a long conversation with Philip Sands and so on. So it's a lot of it's literary text, also a book about international justice, and it's a reportage about from field missions in newly liberated areas. That is in autumn 22 and spring 2023. And then she was unfortunately killed in a missile attack, and her friends completed the book. So it's not finished. She wrote about 60% of the book, and I think that's part of the reason why it's such a strong read, because she never had the chance to finish it, and you feel it. You can read her notes partly, and you can understand what she was going to write. So it's not an ordinary book. It's just it's also it's a call for justice. And a testament, if you want. Yes, I'm extremely proud of this book, and I think now we have reached a point as a publisher, as publishers, to where we can publish books that are from recent days.
But this question, we can come back to these questions when we give the two of you the word, because obviously those texts are only now being written in Ukraine. They were not there for you to translate and publish, and I think we will get back to that a little bit later. One important theme in this book, which you have already said, is Vika traveling in the newly liberated areas along the front. She's doing her research, she's meeting with people. And that brings me to you, Alex, because this is very much, you have another agenda, but this is very much what you are doing as well, and this is very much what the people in your book are doing.
Yes, but first let me just tell you a few words about how I got here. I worked as editorial writer and editorial page editor for a regional daily newspaper in Sweden, Eskilstuna-Kuriren, for 20 years. And I thought that I would work for another 20 years and retire peacefully, comfortably. But course of events made me change my plans. In the spring of 22, I decided to resign from Eskilstuna-Kuriren to work full-time, covering war in Ukraine. Working full-time as a columnist, as an opinion journalist. I'm not a reporter. I'm not looking for stories. I am. My purpose is, building opinion, building narratives. Oh, that horrible word. I'm starting using it. Narratives.
Pro-Ukrainian dislike it, and we all use it.
And in order to write about the war, I need to spend a lot of time there. So I've been traveling back and forth.
And how decisive were your personal ties to Ukraine in this decision?
Yeah, that's small detail. I have personal ties to Ukraine. I'm born in Ukraine. I'm born in Odessa. But I've lived in Sweden since I was 10 years old. But apart from being born in Ukraine, I've been working with Ukraine in different capacities since late 90s. As a journalist, as development aid worker, as a journalist within development cooperation work. My first wife is Ukrainian, so I have a number of links to Ukraine. So Ukraine is my country. So when there's war, I need to make my contribution to that struggle.
Yes.
And when I made it public that I resigned from Eskilstuna-Kuriren and started doing this work, a publisher contacted me and asked me why don't you write a book about Ukraine? About what? I said, I don't know, about Ukraine. But at that time, I didn't have a clear idea, but it gave me a comfort that no matter what I will come up with, the book would be published. So developed into this book. And while, I mean, one of the channels into the war was through different volunteers, among them Swedish volunteers, soldiers, military medics, civilian volunteers. And I came in contact with 3 of them, and followed them, and it developed into a book. So there was the largest stories, bigger stories than would fit into newspaper columns. So I follow a military medic, an infantry soldier, and a civilian volunteer, and mix it with my own experiences, starting in summer of spring 22 and ending in the summer of 23. So the last events are the Ukrainian counteroffensive in 23.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time in frontline, and frontline in Ukraine is, I mean, it's not necessarily fighting positions where the soldiers are. It can be villages, it could be cities, small towns, a few kilometers from the front. That's frontline. So and meet with civilians, with soldiers. But most of the times do not spend there, but other locations in Ukraine. And I've traveled. There's not a single area in Ukraine where I haven't been.
Yeah.
Sumy was a little bit of a gray area for me until a few weeks back. Then I dipped into Russia, also to Kursk region. So I spent a few hours there as well. So this is what I do.
But you had the idea that this will become a book, and somehow you had it with you while traveling.
Yes, I did, and I made the decision of writing it in the summer of 22, when I got to know the military medic Sten and Tilde Aldenbrook. She made a sommarpratare. I don't know what it is in English. Yeah, she's a little bit of celebrity. She was already a bit of celebrity when I met her, but there was a lot of larger stories that she.
And what was the reason for you to choose specifically the Swedish volunteers?
That it was one way of catching, attention, the Swedish public's attention, because they could relate to. This was my assumption, that the Swedish readers would relate more to someone who is from their own country, working in Ukraine. Maybe they think that, Tilde Aldenbrook, she worked in this, she didn't have any. This is a very interesting thing with these volunteers, not only Swedish, but all foreign volunteers that I've met. Almost none of them have had any contact with Ukraine prior to the full-scale war.
Okay.
So Tilde didn't have that. She worked in a coffee shop in Linköping. And then all of a sudden she got, dragged into work with Ukrainian refugees in the spring of 22, and then she started delivering aid initially to Western Ukraine, and then she further and further east ended up in Kharkiv. She stayed in Kharkiv and delivered throughout civilian. Humanitarian aid to civilians, but lately she's entirely focused on delivering aid to army units, Ukrainian army units on the front line.
Okay.
She lives in Kramatorsk. It's not a secret.
Right now,
she's very public with it.
And your assumption was that with Swedish, heroes in the book, you would attract another kind of attention from the Swedish public. I guess that you have been around talking about presenting this book in many places in Sweden.
Yes.
How did it turn out? What kind of reactions do you get from the Swedish audience?
Well, this is a new experience, because writing columns, you write a column and then you forget about it the next day.
Yeah.
Here I had to it's new experience sitting in panels talking about my work. It's very, actually I'm not very comfortable doing it, but I still have to do it.
Okay.
But it's interesting new experience. Well, the reception of the book. Well, I had quite good reviews. It's been reviewed in all large Swedish newspapers. Fairly good reviews. But then, of course, I mean, it is what it is. With non-fiction literature nowadays, it's not a bestseller. I wouldn't say that it's. I mean, a friend of mine, Martin Krag, his books are been incredible big.
But he's on television all the time. So.
Yeah, well, I've been on television a few times as well, but not as many times as Martin.
No, but I mean, sales is one thing. I was more interested perhaps in what people, after a presentation, what do people say to you? What kind of reactions?
They want to buy the book. Unfortunately, I have only this copy with me. Well, many people want to contribute to the struggle because that's one of the purpose. Because I believe that especially nowadays, it's very easy to get grasped by a sense of despair, and I mean I believe despair is an emotion that shouldn't be allowed. I mean anger is okay. Frustration is okay, this sort of anger. Maybe a little bit of hate is also okay, but despair is not, because, then we'll...
Because it doesn't make you act, right?
Yeah, it doesn't make you act. It's not constructive. So by looking at these Swedes that put their heart and soul into the struggle, maybe it might inspire. I hope that it may inspire a little bit those who read the book, and I believe it does.
Okay, because one could also imagine an obviously equally interesting and necessary book for a Swedish reader about the Ukrainian volunteers and the Ukrainian fighters, and that brings me to the next panelist, which is Olena. I would like you to tell about your experience as a volunteer, and also I am so curious about what happens to you as a writing person, as a poet, when you bring that into that experience.
First of all, I want to say thank you to organization of this festival and for all guys who take part of this festival and take part of these narratives, because today I told you about veterans, the best guys in our country. I was really proud to know these guys. I was really proud to stay near these guys, and I see your reaction and I like it. Okay, guys, thank you. And my name is Olena. My call sign Hera. You can call me like this. And I was 7 years part of medical battalion hospitalers. Maybe somebody hear about it? Okay, I love you. Okay, everybody know hospitalers, and we love you too.
I didn't bring my T-shirt today.
Oh my God.
I got a T-shirt with the hospitalers emblem on. It would have been very efficient, but it would attract all the attention instead of listening. So I decided not to put it on.
Oh, sorry, my military medic in my book is working for hospitals.
Yeah.
Hospitals is everywhere. In Stockholm, in the books.
Yeah.
In the narratives. Okay, and war started for me 11 years ago, because I was been in Institutska Street when the barricades start shutting, and the people around me start to shut down, and the macabre is starting, and the war is starting, and at that time we don't know how to explain it, how to name it, but at the few months after that, we understand that at that time start war in Institutska, in the center of the Kiev for us. And 3 years ago, I was wake up by shouting. I woke up in my bed in Kiev, and I fell asleep in a civilian normal ward. And then in the morning, I just woke up. And I feel fear of death because Kiev was shut down by Russian strikes. And I have such metaphoric word about my experience because after my veteran experience, after my combat experience, after my starting my reanimation booth of Strika, who's evac 11,000 cases right now. I just said that of Strika, that this reanimation bus is the best poem I wrote in this war, because this poem, this part of my heart was save lives, 11,000 lives. And it's the greatest poem I wrote in my life. And after that, I can fill in something about literature, because literature for me now, it's not about words, it's not about sense, it's not about some like maybe some like game or something. No, it's about mission, because the feeling right now is like you wrote your poems but by blood, and it's very horrible missions. But I need to do this because I see that some scary and horrible things with other people, and I can't make in silence after that. If I stay silent after this scene, I was like a evil, like Russian. Why not? That's why I trying to write my poems about this part of historical of my Ukraine, about war, and first of all about my readers who was killed by Russians. Many years I spent near Mariupol, and I take part of the evacuation team with Mikola Volkov, who died in 20 years, and trying to save soldiers near Mariupol. And I spent a lot of time here. And I have a lot of readers here. And my last event in Mariupol was in the autumn of 2021. It's a few months before big war. And it was very big pain for me, because I know names of my readers who was die, and these guys was never bring my book, they never read my poems, they never be alive and never live their lives. And that's about my missions. That's about how to be poet now in Ukraine, how to be a voice of Ukraine. And now I think that all of guys, all of artists, all of Ukrainians, you know, just need to speak with two voices. The first voice, it's your voice, it's your opinion to this war, to this trust, to this historical period. And the second voice, it's a voice of fallen guys. Something like Victoria Melina or Maxim Krivtsov. And I thank you, special thanks to volunteer who organized an event of Maxim Krivtsov yesterday. And we talk about Taras Ilya, we talk about Ilya Chernilevsky, we talk about many numbers of guys who use such instrument as we, as poets, as writers. That's because it's mission. It's not only about words, it's not only about sense, but it's about people. Mm-hmm. In general, I think this literature is about people, people's pain, and it's very important about people's hope. Because the experience we have as veterans, it's experience like an astronauts, because it's places that nobody can go here and take this experience. It's about people who it's only in our mind now and they're not alive, and it's experience too. And it's about trust, because Ukrainian literature now, it's a vaccine about Russian propaganda.
You say that every Ukrainian poet right now has to speak with two voices, the personal voices and the voices of those who have fallen. When you think, okay, a poet doesn't necessarily think about the listener or the reader for whom you write, but nevertheless, I would like to ask you the question: has it changed the way you think about for whom you write, from the pre-war and what you are writing now?
Yes, of course, because I repeat this sentence because before war, my poems is less just a game, and I can just see seriously of these poems. Now I have experience, and I use my instrument, I use my words to tell about this experience and tell about my trust. Because the world are horrible now. Ukrainians was live in a genocide time, and it's the worst thing in your life. And the poems and the sense in these poems, new sense in these poems, can do a hope and can do a help for our nation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your support.
Yeah. I think this is where I pass the words to you, Oleksandr. You are, I mean, very fascinating, because you are a writer being born out of this experience of war, and I would like to ask you to tell a bit about that, but I would like to begin just one step earlier, because when I read your biography, I see this very, very successful international career and existence. So the first thing is a very simple question: what made you leave that life and join the armed forces in the spring of 2022? How did that decision happen?
Hello, everyone. Before I answer your question, I would like just to briefly introduce myself.
Yeah.
My name is Oleksandr Denysyuk, and I served as a platoon sergeant in territorial defense forces of Ukraine. I'm here to share my story, to talk about my book, 7 Days of Ukrainian Hell. This book is about my war, my time in the war, about battles I fought with my platoon. It's about courage, about strength. It also to honor my brothers in arms, and also those who lost their lives for our freedom. By writing this book, I also face my own memories, and I hope others will also find some better understanding what war is. And it's not only losses and fear, it's also about bravery, about courage, and about hope, even when it looks very impossible. I wrote these books also, and I wanted to share the stories because it's real. The stories about very simple guys, like basically you and everyone is in this hall. At the same time, I'm here today to thank Sweden for all your support and help. This is very appreciated, even if more than my words can represent it. With your support and help, we not just got tools to fight our enemy, but also we're getting hope and strength. We understand that we are not alone in this fight, and by Sweden standing by us, we feel we stand a chance, regardless of what's going on today in the world. And I really wanted you to know that we do appreciate all this. On the front line in Ukraine, those people, they don't have a chance to say thank you in person, but they all do thank every one of you. And I think with you together, we much stronger than ever. And we stand today, regardless of the losses, regardless of the challenges we face today, but we are still standing, we are still fighting the enemy. So don't lose the hope in us. And I think by standing together, we do have a chance to win this fight, to win this war. So thank you so much for the support, and tack så mycket.
Thank you.
And back to your question now. Why did I decide to join the army on the first days of the full-scale invasion? I mean, that question never even came across, should I or not. I felt it's very natural choice for a man who loves the country, who felt all his life the patriot. It's not about just wearing the broderie on Independence Day, or speaking Ukrainian, or do some celebrations on some particular events, but it's about actions, what you do. So for me it was super natural to join army, to take part. I never been in army before in that sense, and I didn't know, I had no idea what is gonna happen tomorrow or in 1 hour. But I never regret this, and I never had a choice. So it was the only option for me.
Yes. So, Alex, you have...
Yeah, it made me think about, I just, spent a few hours as an interpreter during basic soldier training conducted by Swedish instructors, volunteer instructors. So I had, it's familiar. I do not grasp the military terminology. I'm a civilian, and I apologize to the soldiers. Said, I'm sorry, I'm a civilian. I do not grasp military terminology. And they would, I thought that it was a humble thing to say, and they were just looking at me and saying, "But who do you think we are?"
Yeah.
We're all civilians here. Stop whining and learn the terminology. And this is quite telling that we are used to see soldiers as some sort of professionals. But I mean, especially nowadays in Ukraine, all soldiers are they were recently engineers, architects, or teachers, or cooks, or had civilian professions.
Or poets.
Poets, yes.
Yeah, and I remember words to that effect from, you sent me a part of the introduction of your book, where you have words to that effect as well, that those were not soldiers, there were also, there were husbands and fathers, etc. That is to say civilians.
Absolutely.
Basically. So.
All of my platoon, all of my company, it was all volunteer and civilians.
Yes.
Never had any specific professional trainings.
Yes.
But I had to say that I grew up in a military family, My father was my profession. My brother, he's still serving now in eastern Ukraine, and I grew up in that kind of military atmosphere.
So you knew the terminology.
So, yeah, yes and no, but yeah, I learned it fast.
Yeah, right. Okay, and in this book, as I understand it, you depict very concretely what happened with you and with your fellow in the army. I am interested in how it came about that you decided to write about it. Why did you decide to write a book about it? When did you understand that you needed to do it?
Yeah, this is a very good question, and I feel a bit outside of this box. To be honest, I'm never was writing. I've never had an idea to become a writer, and after my dischargement from the army, I never had actually like a goal to write something about it. And one day I watched a movie, Generation Kill. It's an American movie based on a true story about military operations in Iraq. And it's very simple movie about very ordinary military stuff. It's not like a Rambo movie, come and win. And that movie very much resonated with my story, with what we've lived through with my platoon.
Because it was the same kind of...
Yeah, it was,
experiences.
Very similar experience about chaos, some, fears about, very difficult and challenging situations, and I had like, okay, but our story even more significant from that perspective, and I thought, okay, I want our story also to be remembered, and then I started thinking about this from different perspective as using myself as a tool, as you just explained, that I have to use myself as a tool to put some memory in those who are fallen, to those who serve, because thousands and thousands of people are going away just without saying anything. They just disappearing. They just going in the dust, and no one will ever remember them. And I know I cannot write about everyone, but I can definitely do something that I witnessed and I know personally. So that's why I do my part of contribute my part in this writing world, publishing world, and that's about to honor my brothers in arms who are still serving, and most importantly for those who have fallen, and for the freedom they were falling for.
Yeah, I have a question, and I am putting it to you now, but I guess it's a question for you as well. So if you'd like, you can also say a few words about it. You are describing how you are writing to preserve the memory of those people and to hand the memory over to, us, who are still around, and still, in order for us to understand who those people were. And it's kind of similar to what you describe also in your writing. But I would like to ask, when you do write, when you do go back to those experiences, when you do remember what you were through, how does writing change your own way of understanding what's happened? How does that work as, therapeutic, or I don't know, but what does it do with you when you enter those experiences to write about them?
Yeah, everyone is saying it, yes. All the psychologists, they're saying, yes, you need to work with your trauma if you have one, and you need to talk about it or write about it. I went through some therapy myself, but by writing, I think yes, it does help to face your memories, and it does help to understand better your feelings and what you could do and how you can actually approach your thoughts and all your, challenges like you still have it in your mind, because it's like, sometimes I have like my thoughts, they're like running horses,
Yeah.
and then just you need to handle them. But by writing, I think it's a really good tool to understand it better, to structure it, to put a piece to it, I guess. So it does help, and it helped to me in some way. But I think it also has, maybe for some of us, or maybe it's not that important, but it's important not so much for the writer, for the author, but for the goal, what he wants to achieve with that kind of book. That's also was partially my idea.
Yeah, right. Olena?
Poems like a therapy, art like a therapy, give me a chance to be for my brother and sister in arm as a mentor, as a helpful person, because I just look in this way after start war, and I see how useful art was for my brother and sister in arms, because many number of soldiers and combat medics and volunteers too, and families of all those guys say about it, they have a PTSD or disorders or something like that, or depressions, and art and word and writing as a process is a great way to work with this. It's not a universal way, but it's one of the many number of helpful things. And now I'm very proud to be part of such program as Method Writing, who just working with veterans, and veterans working with veterans. It's so great thing, in Ukrainian, it's no рівний рівному. I just don't know how to translate it correctly. And now I just have a part of warrior writers, and we're trying to start this program in Ukraine and be helpful to other veterans who have maybe not only a mental these things, maybe for memories, because many guys just looking for their lives in another optic, and they say, okay, I just want to scribe what to do with me, this story. I just want to write my story, and it's just look like a way to work with mental health and with memory. Is a very important thing.
I have been working as a translator mainly with contemporary, newly written Ukrainian drama. We had a presentation here two nights ago. And while talking to the dramaturgs and the directors, I mean theater, people from the theater community of Ukraine, there is one theme that it's coming back and back and back again, and it's connected to trauma. How do you depict trauma in the theater in a way that doesn't create new traumas in the audience? How do you reflect on that very concretely in relation to what the two of you are writing? Perhaps you as well, because you're also inside of this, though you talk to Swedish audience. But how do you think around this? What are the limits to what you can write or should write about in order not to traumatize an already vulnerable reader?
I can write about myself, say a few words. I never had an idea to hide anything, like fully, but I also never wanted to emphasize something that, blowing mind of someone. But after my release in Ukrainian, the book, and I start receiving a lot of feedbacks that sometimes books are heavy. That was very, very surprising to me. Like, I had like, yeah, well, what happened? Like, why it's heavy? Like, what's wrong? Like, you know, I'm new in this, so. But they say like, no, it's not about that heaviness that you might think, but it's about the event in general. To realize what's going on when you see the picture, when you read the book, that you fully immerse into it, and you basically live through the events. And this kind of events are heavy just to read about. But yeah, I guess my particular way of describing things was not that traumatic. At least that was my understanding of it. Probably for someone it would be like a bit, yeah, maybe too much or heavy, as they say. Yeah. But that's how it was. I mean, that. All the soldiers are going through it every day, and there is nothing, you know, they cannot hide anything, and no one can hide anything from them. So that's how it is. It's just, you know, recording of what had happened and how it was.
Olena?
As for me, I'm trying to take a balance because my poems is very hard, very maybe horrible, because I wrote about Mariupol, about my readers, and another things that I see as a paramedic, as a combat medic in my life, in my extremely past, but I don't. I just taking this balance because it's very dangerous to take some kind of stuff to auditory. It's very dangerous because ethical moment in this kind of literature is very important, and you must wrote about trauma. But this trauma don't need to be traumatical to your auditory, and it's very hard. But I hope I did it well, and now I just finished my poetry book, and I hope it will be maybe something like act about Russian aggression, and I hope this book will be interesting to all guys who saw the same things like me, for example, or like heroes I wrote about it.
I will give you the word. I would just make one very short reflection on what you said, Olena, again from the practice of translating and working with contemporary drama, because one reflection that I've also heard a couple of times from various persons is okay, we work with a text, and then they say that this text I wrote, it was commissioned by a European theater. I could never have written this text for a Ukrainian theater, because those things I can show, I don't know how to show them to a Ukrainian because of ethical and not to re-traumatize the audience. Alex.
In a way, it's a tight balance. But there are a number of ways of writing about it. I mean, one way is just to describe the war, what happens in the war. And I have this one description in my book where this infantry soldier, he's carrying, and his friends outside Bakhmut, they're carrying a wounded comrade through shallow trenches. And the trenches, it's rainy, and their feet get stuck in the mud, and the trenches are covered with dead Russian soldiers. So one of the Ukrainian soldiers, this is the International Legion, so he's originally from Russia, but he serves in International Legion. One of the soldiers said that I didn't want to step on these dead bodies because I have some sort of respect for the dead. But then I got so exhausted, I just still stepped on them. And another soldier said that, well, in order not to get stuck in the mud, I stepped intentionally on the dead Russian soldiers in order to move forward. And then after writing this and it passed, my editor, and then I still thought that maybe this was a little bit too much as a description. But then I read the review of the book. Said, well, there's something missing. The journalist who wrote the review said, something is missing. Did he look into the dead soldiers' faces? Or, why didn't, the author ask about even that kind of experience? He wanted even more of the explicit content.
Okay.
So, people keep, but then there's another thing to describe them a trauma as such. For instance, after my first frontline visit in the summer of 22, I do some gravel cycling, road cycling, gravel cycling, and I was back in Sweden. I was cycling in the outside Eskilstuna. And I came to think that, while I was watching the fields, I was looking for, artillery impacts, subconsciously. I guess you experienced similar things as well. And some soldiers told me that they never step on the grass. Those things are not as explicit, but it's a story about the wars as well. Maybe that's another way of telling about the war. And this is specifically, this is not trauma, it's not PTSD, severe PTSD, but it's something which in the direction of it. It can go away if you talk about it. Sitting here talking about it, it makes it a bit easier as well. So, this is one way of talking about it, describing it even in writing.
But you told me when we stood outside talking that you are not planning, but you are thinking about whether to write a fiction book based on your experiences. Can you just repeat what you told me outside there? Because it has to do with this and it's interesting.
Well, I've never spoken about those ideas in public.
Oh, sorry.
This is the first time.
Sorry. You shouldn't tell it to a moderator before a panel talk.
Maybe my subconscious wanted me to tell you. Well, yes. This is one question I get a lot from people. Wouldn't you write another book? First, I thought, hold on. I just, if after experiencing writing one book, you do not want to go through that again. But then I think, well, as time passes, I get a perspective of it, and then I think maybe. But next book, if I'm going to write another book, I'm considering writing fiction. And fiction is, I believe it's way harder than this, way harder, because you have to build characters, you have to be out there, you have to dive into those emotions, you have to live through it 24 hours, maybe for a year, and that is hard. I know this was hard enough, but as for now, I don't know if I want to go through that. No. But maybe.
I understand what you're talking about, and this is a testimony to what kind of energy and strength there is in poetry and in writing and in fiction, non-fiction. I would like to, before I had the idea that we would have some 20 minutes in the end where we could have questions from you, and perhaps we will be able to take a question or two, let's see, but not 20 minutes. I would like to pick up what you told about talking about Swedish-Ukrainian solidarity, so to speak. And I would like to do it by asking you, Ola, how do you look at what people like you are doing, what we are doing here right now in a way, in the perspective of the Swedish solidarity with Ukraine? I mean, what has happened and in what situation are we now?
You talked about finding the right words and terminology, and that's what we are doing on a daily basis as publishers and editors. And I think one of our missions are to help the Swedish readers to define the reality, which is especially important today when we have important politicians or whatever you want to call them that try to confuse us all. And as a publisher, we do this by finding the right texts that you people are writing or helping to create. And we translate it and we try to find the right words, the right presentations and so on. And traditionally, publishers has made a lot of books about war, telling how awful war is, how it destroys people's lives and how it affects the souls and so on. But I think our most important mission today is to define the word peace. What is peace? What is a Russian peace? Because that's what everything is. Yeah, that's what people are crying for right now. We want peace for just any price. And we all know here that if the weapons would be silent tomorrow, it wouldn't be real peace. And that's why it's important to learn, to make books and stories about what is happening in the Donbass and Donetsk regions and so on, in the occupied areas, and also in the Russian society, because there's also a Russian peace. We all know how the Russian society works, and and to help the Swedish readers. Now we're talking about Sweden, but it's true everywhere. So that's I think that's a very important part of our work. To show solidarity with Ukraine and also with ourselves, of course. Yeah.
And I should add, as a person who is doing similar work, that one. I mean, you told us about there being no translators almost from Ukrainian into Swedish 2014 and 2022, and that is changing. It's changing rapidly, yes. And it changes due to the fact that those of us who are in the system have started to cooperate in new ways. And I would like to point out the very fact that you are sitting here. Okay, you live in Stockholm already, but you, Olena, coming to visit us here, meeting with colleagues here, perhaps starting to work with some colleagues. I mean, all those small actions that take place on a kind of everyday level is, I mean, normally the result of a publisher's efforts is a book. But in this situation, the result of those efforts is this network growing and the contacts being tighter. And I would just like to, I look at the clock and see that I am now in the end words, and perhaps this is a good end word to say that literary testimony, the writing of it, the reading of it, the translation of it, the publishing of it, is a way to strengthen the ties that we so badly need, both Swedes and Ukrainians. So thank you for writing, translating, publishing, listening. Let's keep talking.
Do you have questions from the audience? Yeah, cool.
Hello, thank you so much for this panel. I would like to ask a question. I'm Ukrainian and I have a lot of friends who was in the army. And I would like to ask a question as people who are, you know, voices of the people from that part of our lives right now. And for Ukrainians, it's very hard to express the feelings in general. And I'm very interested, do you receive a request from your побратими та сестри, or brothers or sisters, as was said earlier, like they text you, can you write this, and send you some notes, you know, after some kind of events on front line, or maybe also you mentioned that you share the voice for the people who lost their lives to defend the country. And do you have it? How many you have it? It's very interesting to know. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I have an answer because yes, my brothers and sisters in arms sometimes send me something from their lives, from their reality, because they want to just like making like a screenshot for this reality, and the poetry is one of the way to make this picture as a screenshot. And you know that it's a poem about you, it's a poem about your experience, and it's so deeply kind of poems at all. And yes, I have this. And you?
It's definitely, I receive, I actually talking basically every day to my brothers in arms. And I see it's important for them not to be forgotten. They feel like by having this written or published, it makes them feel meaningful, that it's not just, you know, they're in the middle of nowhere, but someone in Sweden will read his name and some of his story, and it feel them like, you know, proud of it, and I guess inspire him and support him. I think yes, definitely it's a good thing, and I receiving those feedbacks a lot. So I think it's important to do so, not only for specific soldiers, but it's also for their family a lot, because they also need that kind of support and you know, justice in this way, for their stories to be heard. So yeah, I think it's also important for any Ukrainian to spread this message even as far as possible outside of Ukraine. So I think it's mostly important to have it spread all over outside of Ukraine, because Ukraine lives in this every day, this nightmare, but everyone else needs to understand better, and the Ukrainians wants to be heard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Good question.
Yeah, it's me. Sorry, but just like a thankful for you. It's not a question. My name is Ahmed. I'm a resident here. I'm a half Palestinian Ukrainian. After the war, it becomes like double crisis, because my mother is Ukrainian and my father is Palestinian. Mm-hmm. But I believed after the war that we have to do something. Yeah, we have to do efforts. So thankful for your efforts, and thanks for who one interested to help, and that's it. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you.
Дуже дякую. My question is about what kind of literature today keeps Ukrainian hopes up today in Ukrainian society in general, and perhaps the soldiers or the people in the front in particular. What kind of verses or literature would you say keeps or increases the hope that might be there? Do you understand my question? What literature keeps the hope in the Ukrainian hearts in the current situation?
I can take this one. I have two answers to these questions. One is those kind of literature we are talking about and representing here, and on another hand, most of my friends, they don't really have time to read. But if they read some professional stuff on strategy, tactics, and professional development in the military or in medics, paramedicine. So that type of for now.
I think the two kind of literature was very popular in front now. It's historical things, it's a memorial things, like from soldier to soldier, and the third, it's poems, because poems is reactive, and as Oleksandr says, the soldiers cannot many time to read. It's normal, and we know that our brain in a war was working in another way as in a civil situation, and that's why soldiers was written so reactive, so short reactive, and this poem it's a best variant for them. And the many poems was wrote in walls, in the houses when live veterans near the front line, and in the trenches. Да? In the trenches they wrote short poems too, and it's normal to Ukrainian army. It's a culture of Ukrainian army. It's a part of culture.
I'd like to give you the word, Alex, but I want to say one thing about those short poems as well, because when the big invasion happened in February 22, and we started to work in Sweden in order to get voices through, to get, I mean, not only information, but actual try to understand what is happening. The poems were the first to come. The poems were the first text to kind of, okay, we had diaries, we had Facebook entries, but the poems were the first literary text to come because they immediately emerged. And we could use, and it's perhaps the same poems that were written on the walls later, but we could take those poems, translate them, because yes, it doesn't take that much of an effort to translate a poem, and hand it over. And they had a tremendously important role under the first 7 months. Then the other genres began catching up with the poetry. Alex?
I would just like to object a little bit. That what soldiers do have in plenty is time. 95% of the time they just sit and wait for things to happen. But what they do not have is the energy to put that energy into reading especially some serious things, because they use that time to recover, to digest the experiences they have been through, and so on. So this is a little bit of specifics of frontline. I was surprised how much time soldiers just sit around doing. Looks like they do nothing.
All right, I wanted to expand on my neighbor's remark and reflection. I was thinking when Oleksandr, you had your introduction, where you thanked the Swedish people for their support of the Ukrainian cause. I think sometimes a thank you from the Swedish people to soldiers like you and Olena is in place, actually, because your bravery in unimaginable circumstances are very unappreciated here in Sweden. So thank you from Swedish people like me.
I would like just to reflect on this. I'm actually getting this very, very often, that kind of reaction that Swedish people, they thank me back. And this is why I like it. I love it even more than this kind of reaction exists, and it comes everywhere from basically everyone. So one more reason to love Sweden. You're amazing, guys.
I want to say thank you, because in this auditorium was many guys from Repower, and they helped to Paramedic in Ukraine, and this is a little part of how to Swedish people support Ukrainians, and of all medics, I just thank you for your support Ukraine, for your hope, for your love, and just guys, I love you. You're the best.
Thank you. We had.
Thank you, and thank you for your thanks. I'm part of a big group. I'm a volunteer working a lot with Ukraine, and I will send your thanks out to a big chat group that reaches about 50 volunteer groups tonight. And I'd like to thank you for this very important panel because, and also that publishers are quicker than before. It's not so usual, as I said, to deal with contemporary stories. But you know, you authors and publishers, you play a really important role right now. And because there are so many lies spread, so many lies, and we need more truth. But remember, in a few years, the lies will have been forgotten because they're just documented on the social media and they will disappear. But your books will remain, and they're going to build the real story about what's really happened. So what you're doing now is much more important than just writing the books and spreading that to us right now. You're adding real value to the future, the history learnings of future people. So thank you to the Rangers for this really important panel. And I also want to add that there are more than 100 organizations in Sweden actively themselves driving down to Ukraine, delivering stuff to the front line, to humanitarian help. So that's a lot of organizations. There are about 50 in Denmark. I think there's about 40 in Norway. So you have a big support by volunteers that actually deliver to the front and repower, bringing people to here as well. So thank you very much. And then I have a question. The question is, what is your, because I said it's so important with your books, and maybe to the publisher, what is the greatest challenge for you to actually get these books out on the market, to reach the people?
Is that for me?
Yes. Well, for any one of you, right? So what's the challenge is to get the books out? You write them, how do you get them out on the market?
Lack of knowledge in the newspapers, the editorials and so on. And also it's very few journalists in culture are really engaged in this question for real. There are a lot of people who knows a lot and does a lot. But unfortunately, it's the competition is very difficult because there's so many subjects and new TV serials and so on. So it's basically everything is on the same level there at the newspaper. So I think that's difficult. You have to be very careful when you make a book because the language must be perfect and everything must look good and the presentation must be fantastic in order to break through this wall of different things in the media.
Cultural debates.
Sorry?
The wall of cultural debates in media.
Yeah. The debates, so many debates. So that's it's difficult, but we try. Sometimes we succeed.
No, but I think that you are a little bit too humble. I think that the landscape has changed. That is what I see. Ukraine is represented as a fact on the Swedish book market. Readers know that Ukraine exists. They ask for books, and yes, the sales may not be skyrocketing, but Ukraine is a fact, and that is a very big change.
True.
So,
I would like to tell a few words about my experience in this, since I'm completely new in the business. I guess the biggest challenge is the time. It's very time-consuming things for me as the author. So that time is taken from family and kids. But I hate to complain about this because it's the least I can do and it goes against the purpose of the book itself. So I want to invest that time. I want to invest everything into it. So into the memories of my brothers in arms and sisters in arms. So, but being new in this industry, you're obviously facing challenges like, okay, how it works, etc. So I would say a year ago, I had no idea how it works at all. Now I learned a little bit, and I'm very proud that I finally got my book published in Ukrainian, and now I would like to use this opportunity to say that within next week it will be available, in the English version will be available on Amazon. That will be available like for worldwide audience. And I think nowadays technology, they giving us so many chances to move faster, to move not probably in the perfect way, like you just wanted to make all the product perfect, but sometimes they say do good and fast and not perfect and never. So I think that's also applicable because it's kind of business approach to that kind of industry approach. And I think most of the new authors, they could use new technology, new tools, new opportunities to spread the world and spread the truth, as you just mentioned. So yeah, I think this is the least we can face as a challenge in this world nowadays.
Okay, big thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Please stay where you are. You are getting presents. They are heavy, but you'll get them a bit later. I want to thank the audience first. And actually add a bit regarding what kind of literature lifts people's mood right now. Nowadays, we witness an amazing bloom of Ukrainian book market, disregarding the fact that the biggest publishing printing house was destroyed by the rocket attack, by the missile attack in Kharkiv. It still keeps going, and people buy more books nowadays than they bought earlier, and lots of new names have been discovered, and lots of new names came to different genres. For example, Ukraine fantasy market never has been as much developed as it is right now. And on this note, I just want to say that just like last year, we prepared the digital catalog of different translations, this time into Swedish. Big deal. Thanks to Olena Jansen and and her students, we managed to do that. This digital catalog is actually available if you want to read and also make yourself familiar with some pages of Oleksandr's book. It's there. You can go to UkraineVision website. You can go to History tab there and download the journal there. And you guys have no ways out of there because you will get that directly. Okay. We will send the catalog to you. So on this note, thank everyone for coming. And we wrap up the third day of Ukrainian Vision. Hope to see you soon. Next time, tomorrow we have Ukrainian Day with lots of workshops and artistic talks in Ukrainian. So, of course, you're welcome. We'll have a translator, but be ready for Ukrainian stuff. See you.